Welcome to Woo English, where we make learning English fun and engaging with captivating stories. Today's story brings to life the journey of Avicenna, a legendary healer and scholar whose legacy shines on, inspiring minds across the centuries. Our stories use clear, simple language, making it easy to follow and learn as you listen. Don't forget to leave a comment below and hit the like button if you enjoy the story. Your support helps us create more content just for you. Remember, these stories aren't just entertaining. They're also a powerful way to boost your English skills. Enjoy the journey. Chapter 1. A Child of Wonders. Avicenna was no ordinary child. Born in the year 980 in a small village near Bukhara, now in modern Uzbekistan, he was given the name Ibn Sina. To his parents, he was a curious and brilliant boy. But to those who watched from afar, he seemed like a mystery, a spark waiting to ignite. Imagine it, a quiet village, fields stretching under the endless sky, and in the middle of it all, a small boy, no more than 6, asking questions that would make a grown man stop and think. "Father," he'd ask, his wide dark eyes glimmering with wonder, "why do the stars move across the sky? What makes the sun rise each day?" He wasn't just asking for answers. He was hungry to know. His father, Abdullah, was a man of learning. Though he didn't have many riches, he possessed something far greater. Books. Shelves filled with old, worn volumes, carrying knowledge passed down through generations. And in the evenings, when work was done, he would read to Avicenna, sharing tales of the stars, of science, of wisdom from ancient lands. Little did Abdullah know he was lighting a fire in his son's heart that would burn brighter and brighter with each passing day. Avicenna's thirst for knowledge was insatiable. While other children played in the fields, he could be found alone, crouched over a book, his lips moving silently as he read each line. To him, these were not just words on paper. They were secrets, whispers from the minds of men who lived long ago. They called to him, each page urging him to discover more, to dive deeper. He began his studies with the basics, arithmetic, language, and simple sciences. But his mind worked fast, faster than anyone could have expected. By the time he was 10, he had mastered what others might struggle with for years. His family marveled at his brilliance, but the villagers, they were puzzled, almost frightened by his abilities. "That boy," they'd say in hushed voices, "he's different. He sees things others don't." But Avicenna was just getting started. His heart beat faster every time he learned something new, every time he uncovered a piece of knowledge that had been hidden. It was like a puzzle, one he was determined to solve. And he knew. Even as a child, he knew that his mind would be his greatest weapon, his sharpest tool. One night, as the village lay silent under the stars, Abdullah took his son outside. The sky stretched above them, a dark, endless ocean filled with sparkling stars. "Look up, Avicenna," his father whispered, pointing toward the heavens. "The stars. They've been here for thousands of years, guiding travelers, marking the seasons. They carry secrets, secrets that we may never understand." But Avicenna, staring up in wonder, didn't feel overwhelmed. No, he felt a thrill, a calling. As he gazed at the constellations, he made a silent promise. One day, he thought, I will understand. I will uncover these mysteries. As the days passed, his hunger for knowledge grew. He begged his father for more books, more lessons, more answers. He studied long into the night, his small fingers tracing lines of text by candlelight, his young mind absorbing every word like a sponge. He learned about mathematics, logic, language, and each new subject opened doors to even greater mysteries. But it wasn't enough. There were questions in his mind that no one could answer, not even his father. "Father," he asked one evening, "what makes the human body work? Why do people fall ill?" These were not questions a child usually asks. But Avicenna was no ordinary child. Abdullah looked at his son with both pride and worry. He could see that his son's mind was a storm of questions, swirling with ideas that seemed far too large for his age. But how could he hold him back? How could he silence a mind like that? One day, Abdullah took Avicenna to meet a local scholar, a man wise in the ways of medicine and philosophy. This man, grey-haired, stooped, with eyes that seemed to hold secrets of their own, was both impressed and astounded by Avicenna. The boy's knowledge was already vast, his questions sharp, almost piercing. But as they spoke, the scholar could sense Avicenna was not just learning. He was seeking something deeper, something that even the greatest scholars struggled to find. "Child," the old scholar said, his voice soft yet filled with awe, "you are destined for greatness. But the path you seek is not easy. Knowledge is a gift, but it is also a burden. Are you ready for what lies ahead?" Avicenna didn't hesitate. "Yes," he replied, his voice steady, his gaze unwavering. He felt a certainty, a pull, as if the very stars were calling him forward. And so his journey began in earnest. From that day on, Avicenna studied tirelessly. He learned from every book he could find, every teacher willing to share their wisdom. Mathematics, physics, philosophy, nothing was too difficult for him. His mind was like a blade, sharp and keen, cutting through mysteries that left others baffled. His parents watched with a mixture of pride and amazement as their son grew, not just in knowledge, but in determination. As he grew older, he started to notice the suffering around him. Illnesses that had no cure, people in pain, lives lost too soon. His heart ached, and a new thought began to form in his mind. What if he could do more? What if, instead of just learning, he could find ways to heal, to help others live better lives? This idea took hold of him, giving him purpose, a reason to go beyond the limits of what he already knew. Then came the fateful day when Avicenna's reputation began to spread. He was no longer just the curious child in the village. He was becoming known as a young scholar, a mind to be reckoned with. Word of his brilliance reached far and wide, and people began seeking him out, eager to learn from him, to witness the mind that seemed capable of anything. And yet, Avicenna remained humble. He didn't care for fame or fortune. His only love was knowledge, his only goal, to unlock the secrets of the universe. But he was beginning to realize that his path would not be an easy one. With every answer he found, more questions appeared, more challenges rose before him, each one daring him to go further, to push harder. But Avicenna, young though he was, stood undaunted. His journey was only beginning, and he knew. He felt that he was meant for something greater than even he could imagine. The world awaited him, with all its mysteries, its wonders, and its challenges. And he, the child of wonders, was ready to face it. As he looked out over the fields of his village, the stars above seemed to whisper his name, guiding him forward. Avicenna smiled, a small, knowing smile, and set his gaze on the horizon, his heart filled with a sense of destiny, his mind sharp and eager. And so he took his first steps on the path that would make him a legend. Chapter 2. Secrets of the Stars. Avicenna, now a few years older, stood in the cold night air, gazing up at the sky. The stars. They stretched across the heavens, shimmering in endless patterns like a sea of light. Each one seemed to call his name, inviting him to discover its mysteries. For hours he stood there, his head tilted back, his eyes fixed on the constellations above. And in that quiet night, something stirred within him. A feeling he could barely explain. "Father," he whispered, almost afraid to break the silence. "Why? Why do the stars move like that? Why are some brighter, some faint?" His voice was filled with wonder, his mind racing with possibilities. His father, Abdullah, looked down at his son and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "The stars, my son, they are ancient. They have guided travelers, marked seasons. They've watched over us for thousands of years." Abdullah paused, his gaze soft but knowing. "Some believe the stars have power, secrets that even the wisest scholars cannot explain." Avicenna's heart beat faster. Secrets, he thought, his mind already reaching into those distant depths. Could he be the one to unlock them? But these weren't simple questions, and the answers didn't come easily. Every night, as the world slept, Avicenna would return to the stars, each one a mystery he was determined to solve. He studied their patterns, their movement, even the stories people told about them. He filled his head with ideas, some real, some imagined. But to him, they were all part of the grand puzzle. One evening, as he sat beside his father under the open sky, a thought struck him. "Father," he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, "could the stars tell us more than just where we are? Could they show us the truth about everything?" Abdullah smiled, a soft, knowing smile. "Perhaps," he replied, his voice gentle but filled with pride. "But to understand the stars, Avicenna, you must understand the world itself. You must study, learn, explore. Only then will the stars reveal their secrets." From that moment on, Avicenna's curiosity became a flame, a burning need for knowledge that no one could extinguish. He threw himself into his studies with a passion that amazed everyone around him. Mathematics, science, philosophy. He devoured every book, every lesson. No problem was too hard, no subject too complex. But as he learned, he also began to see just how much he didn't know. Each new discovery seemed to open more questions, each answer only leading him to new mysteries. His mind was like a labyrinth, twisting and turning, each path filled with challenges. But Avicenna didn't give up. If anything, the challenges excited him, driving him forward, pushing him to dive even deeper into the unknown. One day, an old scholar from the nearby city of Bukhara came to visit Avicenna's village. The scholar, wise and respected, was known for his knowledge of the stars, the earth, and the ways of science. Avicenna's father introduced him to the man, hoping that his son could learn from such wisdom. The scholar, with his grey beard and weathered face, looked down at the young boy with curiosity. "So, you are the boy who has questions," he said, his voice deep and filled with warmth. Avicenna nodded, his eyes wide with hope. "Yes, sir. I want to know about the stars, and the earth, and everything." The scholar chuckled softly. "Everything, you say? Well, young man, knowledge is a long journey, a difficult one." His voice grew serious. "Are you prepared for the hardship, the doubts, the sacrifices that come with such a journey?" Without a moment's hesitation, Avicenna nodded. "Yes, sir," he replied, his voice firm. "I will do whatever it takes." The scholar watched him carefully, then nodded. "Very well," he said, his eyes filled with a strange light. "Then let us begin." Over the next few days, the scholar taught Avicenna many things, about the stars, the planets, the patterns in the sky. He showed him how to use an astrolabe, a tool to measure the stars' positions. Avicenna's young hands trembled as he held it, his heart racing as he learned to see the sky in a whole new way. Night after night, they would sit under the stars, the old scholar explaining, Avicenna listening, his mind racing with new ideas, new possibilities. Each lesson was like opening a door into a new world, each word unlocking something deep within him. But one night, as they sat together, the scholar grew silent, his gaze distant. Avicenna, sensing something was wrong, turned to him, his eyes filled with concern. "Master, is something troubling you?" The scholar sighed, his voice low and heavy. "Knowledge is a powerful thing, my boy," he said slowly, his eyes reflecting the stars above. "But it can be dangerous. The more you know, the more you will see, the more you will understand. And that understanding, it can be a heavy burden." Avicenna's heart skipped a beat. A burden? He had always thought of knowledge as a gift, a treasure to be cherished. But now, as he looked into the scholar's weary eyes, he felt a flicker of doubt, a shadow he hadn't seen before. Will I be strong enough?" he asked, his voice trembling. The scholar placed a hand on his shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. "You must decide that for yourself, young Avicenna. Only you can choose the path you will walk. But remember, if you pursue knowledge, you must do so with courage. For the truth, though beautiful, is not always kind." For a moment they sat in silence, the stars watching over them, ancient and wise. Avicenna's heart pounded, his mind torn between excitement and fear. He knew he could turn back, live a simple life, one without questions, without the burden of knowledge, but something deep inside him, something strong and fierce, would not let him go. And so he made his choice. The next morning, before dawn, Avicenna went to his father. "Father," he said, his voice clear and steady, "I want to study, truly study. I want to understand everything I can, no matter how hard it is." His father looked at him for a long moment, his gaze soft yet filled with pride. "Then go, my son, go and learn. But remember, No matter how far you go, no matter what you discover, remember where you came from. Remember the stars, the ones we watched together. With his father's blessing, Avicenna's path was set. He threw himself into his studies with a passion that surprised even the scholars around him. Mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, nothing was too difficult, no challenge too great. The village, the stars, his family, all remained in his heart, guiding him forward, giving him strength. But he knew, deep down, he knew that this was only the beginning. His journey had just begun, and the secrets of the stars were waiting for him, calling him to discover their truths. And Avicenna, the boy who asked questions, the boy who dreamed of the stars, was ready to answer their call. Chapter 3. The Turning Point. Avicenna was 16, just 16, and already he had devoured every book in his father's collection and more. Mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, his mind was a library filled with knowledge far beyond his years. But his thirst, it remained unquenched. Each answer brought new questions, each discovery only hinted at a greater mystery. One day, as he walked through the bustling streets of Bukhara, a whisper reached his ear. "The Grand Library," someone murmured, eyes wide with wonder. "The place where secrets lie." Avicenna stopped in his tracks, his heart pounding. The Grand Library. A place spoken of in hushed tones, a place where only the elite and the privileged were allowed. The library was said to contain manuscripts older than the city itself, scrolls from distant lands, knowledge hidden from common eyes. Just the thought of it made his pulse quicken. Could he, a boy from a small village, gain entrance to such a place? Days turned into nights as he dreamed of the library's hidden treasures. His father noticed the change in him, his eyes bright with longing, his spirit restless. "My son," Abdullah said gently, "you seek something far beyond our reach, but perhaps, the stars have a way." And as if guided by fate, that chance soon came. The ruler of Bukhara fell ill, gravely ill. None of his physicians could help him. Their methods failed, their medicines powerless. But word had spread of a young man in the city, a brilliant mind who understood medicine beyond his years. Young Avicenna. A summons came, unexpected and urgent. The ruler's court demanded his presence, hoping that this prodigy, this boy who knew so much, might save their leader. With his father's blessing, Avicenna went, his heart heavy with responsibility, but also alive with hope. The palace was grand, unlike anything he had ever seen. Marble floors gleamed under golden light, statues and paintings adorned the walls, and servants moved silently in their duties. But none of this interested Avicenna. His focus was on one thing, the ruler, lying weak and pale, surrounded by worried faces, every eye turning to him as he entered. Avicenna stepped forward, nerves racing but his face calm and composed. He took the ruler's hand, feeling the warmth of fever, the frail pulse beneath his fingertips. For a moment, he closed his eyes, listening, not just to the man's heartbeat, but to his own inner voice. And in that quiet, he found the answer. He ordered herbs and prepared a medicine, his hand steady, his mind clear. When he returned to the ruler's side, he spoke softly, confidently. "Drink this, sire. It will ease your pain." And, as the liquid touched the ruler's lips, a wave of silence filled the room. Time itself seemed to hold its breath, until the ruler's eyes fluttered open, clearer, stronger. "You!" the ruler whispered, looking at Avicenna with astonishment. "You have given me life!" The court erupted in relief, voices praising him, hands patting his back. But Avicenna, standing there amidst the noise, felt only one thing: the realization of his own power. His knowledge had saved a life. He felt alive with purpose, the weight of his potential resting on his shoulders. As a reward, the ruler granted him access to the grand library. Avicenna's heart leapt. This was it, the chance he had been waiting for. With the ruler's blessing, he was escorted to a large iron-bound door guarded by men in armor, their expressions stern. They stepped aside, opening the doors slowly, and Avicenna felt the air grow thick with secrets as he entered. Inside, shelves stretched to the ceiling, filled with books and scrolls, some dusty and ancient, others bound in leather and gleaming with gold lettering. The scent of parchment and ink filled his senses, a perfume that held the mysteries of ages. He stepped forward, almost afraid to disturb the silence, his fingers brushing over the spines of books from distant lands. Egypt, Greece, Persia. There were texts on medicine, philosophy, mathematics, and even hidden scrolls on alchemy. Each shelf was a doorway to a different world, each book a treasure waiting to be uncovered. He spent hours there, days even, his body barely leaving the library. He studied rare manuscripts, books written by scholars who had lived centuries before him. He read theories on the nature of the human soul, detailed explanations of the stars and planets, and the delicate art of healing. One night, as the candles flickered low, his eyes fell upon a manuscript that seemed older than the rest. Its pages were brittle, the ink faded. He carefully opened it, his heart racing as he read. It was a text on the human body, on medicine, but unlike anything he had ever seen. This was not just knowledge, it was wisdom, wisdom of the deepest kind. In that moment, he felt the weight of what he was learning, the power of the knowledge he held in his hands. But with that power came a whisper of doubt. What if I cannot live up to this? What if I fail? The thought haunted him, a shadow creeping into his mind. He was just one person, one boy. Could he truly carry this burden? But as quickly as the doubt came, a fire rose within him. No! He had been given this chance, and he would not waste it. He would learn, he would study, he would unlock every secret the Grand Library held. And so, night after night, he read, he memorized, he filled his mind with the knowledge of the ages. By the time he left the library, weeks had passed, and he was changed. He was no longer just a boy from a small village. He had touched the past, understood the wisdom of those who came before, and felt the promise of a future yet to be written. As he walked back through the palace, his head held high. He knew. This was only the beginning. His journey was far from over. He had unlocked doors that could never be closed, and with each step, he felt the weight of his destiny grow heavier, his purpose clearer. Avicenna left the palace that day a different person, a scholar, a healer, and perhaps something more. A soul with a mission, a mind filled with knowledge, a heart ready for whatever the world would demand of him. And as he looked up at the night sky, at the stars that had once whispered his name, he knew they were watching him, guiding him forward on a path that only he could walk. The world awaited him, its mysteries, its challenges, its wonders, and Avicenna, with his mind sharper than ever, with his heart unshaken, was ready to face it. Chapter 4. A Dangerous Mentor. Avicenna was reaching new heights, yet even the sharpest mind needs guidance. So when a scholar, known only as Al-Razi, arrived in Bukhara, Avicenna's curiosity was immediately piqued. This man, mysterious and reserved, was known for his knowledge in medicine and philosophy, and whispers followed him wherever he went. People said he possessed secrets, dark secrets, that he kept hidden from the world. One evening, as Avicenna studied alone, a knock echoed through his quiet chamber. He opened the door to see Al-Razi standing before him, his piercing eyes glinting in the candlelight. "You are Avicenna," the scholar said, his voice calm yet carrying a strange intensity. "The boy who healed a ruler and unlocked the Grand Library." Avicenna nodded, taken aback. How did this man know so much about him? "Yes, that is me," he replied carefully, feeling a mix of awe and apprehension. "Good," Al-Razi continued, a faint smile on his lips. "I have heard of your potential, young one. But tell me, are you willing to go beyond the limits of what you know?" Avicenna's pulse quickened. Beyond the limits? What could this scholar mean? He felt both intrigued and uneasy, as if he were standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump into the unknown. But his mind thirsted for answers, no matter the risks. "Yes," he replied firmly, "I am ready to learn." And so began his lessons with Al-Razi. But these were no ordinary lessons. They were intense, challenging, and often unsettling. Al-Razi introduced him to concepts that shook his understanding of the world, forcing him to question everything he thought he knew. They delved into the human body's mysteries, into ancient philosophies that seemed to hint at hidden truths. Truths that were not meant for everyone to know. One night, as they sat in the dim glow of a single candle, Al-Razi leaned close, his voice low and almost dangerous. "Avicenna," he murmured, "there are powers in this world that can destroy or heal. Those who understand these forces wield great strength. But remember, knowledge can be a burden, one that many fail to carry." A chill ran down Avicenna's spine. Was this a warning or a test? He met Al-Razi's intense gaze and felt the weight of the words settle deep within him. I am not afraid," Avicenna whispered, though a sliver of doubt crept into his heart. He wanted to learn, but how much was too much? Days turned into weeks, each lesson pulling him further into realms of knowledge he had never dared to explore. They practiced medicine on wounded villagers, studied rare plants with strange powers, and even dabbled in alchemy, mixing potions that fizzed and bubbled, releasing clouds of smoke that filled the room with strange scents. Avicenna's excitement grew, but so did his caution. There was something unsettling about Al-Razi, something he couldn't quite place. Then one evening, Al-Razi presented him with a book unlike any he had ever seen. Its cover was dark and worn, with symbols that seemed to twist and move under the candlelight. "Read this," Al-Razi commanded, his voice barely above a whisper. "But be warned, young one. Once you open this book, you will see things that cannot be unseen." Avicenna hesitated, his heart pounding in his chest. Every instinct told him to turn away, to leave, to return to the familiar safety of his studies. But the thirst for knowledge, it overpowered everything else. He reached out, his hand trembling as he touched the book, feeling its cool, rough surface beneath his fingertips. As he opened it, the words seemed to jump off the page, ancient symbols and languages he didn't recognize, yet somehow he understood. The text spoke of power, of secrets that could change the course of a man's life, and of dangers that lurked in the pursuit of forbidden knowledge. As he read, a strange feeling settled over him, a mixture of awe and fear. Hours passed, and when he finally looked up, Al-Razi's gaze was fixed on him, intense, almost predatory. "Now you understand," the scholar said quietly. "The mind can wield powers beyond mere medicine and science, if one is willing to pay the price." Avicenna's mouth felt dry. He felt like he had glimpsed something vast and terrifying, something that could consume him if he wasn't careful. "But is it worth it?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Is knowledge worth such a cost?" Al-Razi laughed, a low, bitter sound. "Only you can answer that," he replied. "You are gifted, Avicenna, but beware. Wisdom without caution can lead to ruin." Avicenna returned home that night, his mind filled with the words of the forbidden text, his heart heavy with questions. He barely slept, his dreams haunted by images he couldn't explain, shadows that whispered his name, flames that danced in strange patterns. Was this his path? To walk a line between light and darkness, between healing and danger. The next day he confronted Al-Razi. "I want to learn," he said firmly, his voice steady, "but I will not follow a path that leads to destruction." Al-Razi looked at him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded, a flicker of approval in his eyes. "Very well," he said quietly. "You are wiser than most, young one. And remember, a true healer's purpose is not just knowledge, but wisdom. You must know when to stop, when to pull back, even when it pains you." The days that followed were filled with intense study, but Avicenna felt something change within him. He no longer sought knowledge recklessly. Instead, he began to understand the weight of what he was learning. Every lesson became a test, not just of his mind, but of his spirit. And Al-Razi watched, as if waiting to see if Avicenna would break. But Avicenna didn't break. He rose to each challenge, each lesson, with a strength that surprised even himself. He walked away from the darkness when he needed to, knowing that his true purpose was not power but healing. And in the end, he learned the most important lesson of all, that wisdom, true wisdom, came not from knowing everything, but from knowing what mattered most. Finally, the day came when he parted ways with Al-Razi. The scholar's face was a mask of approval mixed with something else, perhaps regret or respect. "You have chosen your path, Avicenna," he said, his voice softer than Avicenna had ever heard. "May it lead you to greatness." Avicenna bowed, a deep respect filling his heart for the man who had taught him so much, even if their ways were now different. "Thank you, Master," he said quietly. As he walked away from Al-Razi's home, he felt both lighter and wiser. He knew he was changed, that his mind held secrets most would never understand. But he also knew he had found his purpose, his own path. A path of healing, of wisdom, of balance. And as he stepped into the open air, the sun warm on his face, he felt ready. Ready for whatever lay ahead, whatever challenges, whatever mysteries. He was Avicenna, healer, scholar, and seeker of truth, and his journey had only just begun. Chapter 5. The Healing Touch. A fierce wind blew across Bukhara, carrying with it the cries of the sick and the smell of fear. A plague had descended upon the city. It was swift, invisible, a shadow creeping through streets and homes, sparing no one in its path. Rich or poor, young or old, all were vulnerable to its grasp. As people grew ill, panic spread like wildfire, filling every corner with dread. But in the heart of this chaos, one young man stood steady, Avicenna. He was barely 17, but already known for his wisdom, his calm mind, and his healing skills. The city's people looked to him with hope, desperate for someone, anyone, who could save them from the terrible sickness that ravaged their families. Avicenna walked through the crowded streets, his heart heavy with what he saw. The sick lay on blankets, moaning softly, their faces pale and sweaty. Mothers held their children close, fathers looked on helplessly, and the air was thick with cries and prayers. Every face he passed seemed to ask the same question: "Can you help us?" He stopped before an old man, his breathing shallow, his skin hot to the touch. Avicenna knelt down, feeling the man's forehead, observing the color of his skin, listening to his rattling breath. His mind raced with possibilities, quickly sorting through symptoms and remedies he had studied. Fever, cough, fatigue. But what was the cause? In his search for answers, Avicenna turned to the small herbs and potions he had gathered, laying them out before him like tools of war. He mixed feverfew with honey, created poultices, boiled roots, all with the precision and patience of a master healer. He worked tirelessly, moving from one patient to the next, giving comfort, providing remedies, his own body aching from exhaustion. But he pushed on, his focus unwavering. This was his purpose, his calling. Days passed, sleepless, relentless days. Avicenna treated each patient as if they were his family, each small success giving him the strength to keep going. He stayed by the bedsides of the sick, speaking softly to calm their fears, whispering words of encouragement as he handed them potions to drink. But for every life he saved, there were others who slipped away, too weak or too far gone. With each loss, he felt a pang in his heart, a pain that no book, no study could heal. What more can I do? He thought, a flash of doubt entering his mind. Is it enough? One evening, As the sky darkened, he sat alone, his hands trembling from days of work, his mind clouded with exhaustion. He closed his eyes, letting out a heavy sigh. He could hear the faint voices of the sick drifting to him on the wind, and he felt the weight of their suffering pressing down on him. Suddenly, a gentle hand touched his shoulder. He turned to see an elderly woman, her eyes filled with tears of gratitude. "My son," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My son is alive because of you. Thank you. Thank you." Her hands clasped his as if he were a miracle. In that moment, he felt his strength return, a new resolve forming within him. "I must keep going," he thought, his jaw set with determination. "I cannot give up. Not now." The next day, he approached the city's leaders with a bold idea. "We must work together," he urged them, his voice firm, "and organize our efforts. We must keep the sick in one place, separate the healthy, and prevent the sickness from spreading further." His plan was simple but powerful: a quarantine. Though it was met with skepticism, his confidence and the respect he had earned finally convinced them. They created a temporary hospital, a place where Avicenna could care for the sick and keep them isolated from the healthy. And there, in that makeshift sanctuary, he continued his work, surrounded by rows of beds, each one holding a life he was determined to save. As the days passed, Avicenna developed new methods, new treatments. He observed patterns, noticing which herbs helped with fevers, which mixtures soothed coughs. He began writing down his observations, filling pages with notes, formulas, and remedies. This was more than healing. It was discovery, a journey into the unknown world of medicine. One evening, as he sat by a patient's bedside, a young boy no older than 5, he felt a surge of compassion. The child's small hand lay limp in his own, his breathing shallow. Avicenna watched him with a heavy heart, knowing the boy's family waited anxiously outside, praying for a miracle. "Stay strong, little one," Avicenna whispered, stroking the boy's hair. He applied a cool cloth to the child's forehead, speaking softly, as if his words alone could bring healing. Hours passed, each one feeling like an eternity, until finally, the boy's eyes fluttered open, a faint smile crossing his lips. The news of Avicenna's success spread through Bukhara, and soon people began calling him the miracle healer. Though he accepted their gratitude, he knew that the real miracle was knowledge. Knowledge that he was learning day by day, patient by patient, as he faced the mysteries of the human body. But in his heart, Avicenna felt a longing, a question that grew louder with each life he touched. How many more could I help? How much more could I learn? He wanted to understand every detail, every cure, to ensure that no one would have to suffer from ignorance again. And so, he continued, driven by a force that even he couldn't fully explain. After weeks of tireless work, the sickness finally began to fade. The streets grew quiet again, the fear lifting, replaced by relief. People returned to their homes, and life began to flow once more, gentle and hopeful. As Avicenna walked through the village, he saw the faces of those he had saved, their eyes filled with gratitude and wonder. Some called him a hero, a healer, but he felt only the weight of what he had seen, of those he could not save. And yet, He knew he had done all he could, that he had given them hope when there was none. In the quiet that followed, he sat alone, watching the sun set over the hills, his heart filled with a quiet peace. He had faced the darkness, touched the edge of despair, and returned stronger, wiser. He was no longer just a young scholar or a boy with questions. He was a healer, tested and proven. And as he watched the sky turn to night, a single star appeared, shining brightly above him. Avicenna smiled, feeling its light warm his face, and whispered, "Thank you." For he knew in that moment that his path was clear, and that he would continue to follow it, wherever it might lead. Chapter 7. The Book of Healing begins. Avicenna sat alone, a single candle flickering on his desk, casting shadows across the walls. But his mind was filled with light. He was about to embark on something monumental, something that felt larger than life itself. Before him lay blank sheets of parchment, waiting to carry words that would change the world. The Book of Healing, that's what he would call it. A work that would capture his knowledge, his insights, and his discoveries in medicine, philosophy, and the natural sciences. It would be a guide for healers, a beacon for seekers of wisdom, a record of his journey for future generations. He took a deep breath, his hand trembling as he picked up the quill. This was not just a book. This was his life, his purpose, written into words. But where to begin? How could he capture the vastness of all he had learned in a single book? His mind buzzed with ideas, memories of lessons, patience, herbs, and remedies. He thought of the people he had healed, the lives he had saved, the nights spent reading by candlelight. Yes, he thought, this will be more than just a book. It will be a legacy. He dipped the quill in ink and began to write, his hand moving slowly at first, each letter precise, careful. He wanted his words to be clear, simple, yet powerful, something that could reach anyone, from the humblest healer to the greatest scholar. The art of healing, he wrote, begins not in the body, but in the heart and mind. As he wrote, the room grew silent, almost as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what he would create. Hours passed, then days. Avicenna barely slept, barely ate, his focus sharp, his determination unbreakable. He filled page after page, each one carrying a piece of his knowledge, his soul. But it was not easy. Oh no! There were moments of doubt, moments when he would pause, staring at the words he had written, wondering if they were enough. Is this truly the way? He would ask himself, his voice a whisper in the stillness. And in those moments he felt a shadow of fear. A fear that his words might fall short, that his work might be forgotten, lost in the endless march of time. Yet each time doubt crept in, he pushed it away, his mind steady, his purpose clear. This is my path, he reminded himself, gripping the quill tighter. This is why I was given this mind, this knowledge, to share it, to pass it on. Then came the sections on medicine, the very heart of his work. He poured into these pages every lesson he had learned, every herb and remedy he had discovered. He wrote of fevers and coughs, of strange illnesses and their cures. He described the human body with a clarity that was breathtaking, each part explained with such detail, such precision, that it seemed to come alive on the page. His descriptions were not just technical. No, they were poetic, filled with a reverence for the miracle of life. The heart, he wrote, is more than an organ. It is the seat of courage, the source of strength. To heal the heart, one must not only treat the body, but understand the spirit within. He could feel the weight of his words, each sentence a thread in the grand tapestry he was weaving. And as the pages filled, he felt a strange peace settling over him, a feeling of rightness, of purpose. This was what he was meant to do. This was his gift to the world. But then, one night, as he wrote about the mind, that mysterious, wondrous part of the human being, he felt a flash of doubt. Can anyone truly understand the mind? He wondered, his quill hovering over the page. The mind was vast, limitless, filled with thoughts, dreams, fears. How could he capture something so immense in mere words? He thought of the patients he had treated, of the broken minds he had seen, the sorrow, the pain. The mind, he realized, was as fragile as it was powerful. And yet, he believed. He knew that understanding it could lead to a deeper healing, a healing beyond the body. So he continued, his writing filled with passion, with hope. The mind, he wrote, is a landscape of memories and emotions, a place where healing must begin, where courage must grow. His heart ached with the truth of it, with the beauty and mystery of what he was trying to express. As he neared the final pages of the section on medicine, he felt a wave of exhaustion, his hand cramping from the hours spent writing. But he knew he could not stop, not now. The words were flowing too freely, each one a drop of his spirit, of his dedication. He pressed on, his fingers stiff, his eyes heavy. But his heart was light, filled with a quiet joy. Finally, he set down his quill, his work for the night complete. He looked at the pages before him, filled with his careful, thoughtful script. He had captured something precious, something that went beyond knowledge, beyond science. This was not just medicine. This was his soul, his gift to those who would come after him. He leaned back, closing his eyes, letting the silence wash over him. In that moment, he felt the weight of the journey he had taken to reach this point, the struggles, the sleepless nights, the endless search for answers. He felt proud. And for the first time, he allowed himself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, he was creating something that would last, something that would truly make a difference. The book of healing was not yet finished. No, there was still much to write, much to explore. But tonight, as he sat in the quiet glow of the candlelight, he felt a sense of peace, a feeling that he was exactly where he was meant to be. And as he drifted into sleep, his mind filled with dreams of those who would one day read his words, who would carry his knowledge into the future, he knew that his journey was far from over. This was only the beginning. The book of healing would grow as he grew, as his mind and heart continued to reach toward the truth. Avicenna had found his path, and nothing would stop him now. Chapter 8. Exile and the Road of Trials. Avicenna was forced to flee. Everything he had known, his home, his sanctuary, his place of learning, all gone in an instant. Political turmoil had erupted, and the city was no longer safe. He, a healer and a scholar, was suddenly seen as a threat, a figure to be chased, hunted, and exiled. The whispers of betrayal, the eyes watching his every move. They all told him it was time to leave. He gathered his few belongings, scrolls, ink, and precious manuscripts from his nearly completed book of healing, and left under the cover of darkness. His heart was heavy, but his steps were steady. The journey would be long, treacherous even, but he would not let fear consume him. No. He was Avicenna, and his purpose was stronger than any danger he faced. As he walked through the winding mountain paths and desolate stretches of desert, the quiet of the night surrounded him. Stars sparkled overhead, his silent companions on the lonely road. Each step carried him further from the life he knew, yet closer to the destiny he felt pulling at his soul. The road itself seemed to test him. Cold winds, scorching days, and the isolation of endless horizons. But he pressed on, determined, each mile a testament to his resilience. One evening, as he stopped to rest near a small village, he saw a group of men gathered by a fire, their faces etched with exhaustion. Travelers, like him, but they were injured, their wounds fresh, their clothes torn. Without a second thought, Avicenna approached them. "I am a healer," he said, his voice calm but filled with purpose. "May I help?" The men looked at him with skepticism. Who was this lone wanderer claiming to be a healer? But desperation spoke louder than doubt, and soon Avicenna was at work, his hands moving quickly, efficiently. He cleaned wounds, applied herbs, and whispered words of comfort to ease their pain. By the time dawn broke, he had saved 2 lives and earned their respect. Word of the wandering healer spread as he continued his journey. Each village he passed through, he left behind whispers of miracles, tales of his gentle touch, his brilliant mind. People brought him their sick, their injured, their broken-hearted. They came to him with hope in their eyes, and he answered with every skill, every ounce of knowledge he had. This was his path, even in exile. Perhaps, especially in exile. But he was not without enemies. Some feared his knowledge, others envied his skill, and there were those who simply saw him as an outsider. One night, as he lay sleeping in a quiet town, a group of men approached his tent, their faces masked, their intentions clear. They stormed in, shouting accusations, calling him a fraud, a sorcerer. Avicenna barely had time to defend himself before they seized his scrolls, his manuscripts, everything he held dear. His book of healing, gone. He tried to reason with them, his voice calm, pleading. "Please, these are not spells or curses. They are knowledge, they are for healing, for helping." But the men would not listen. In a moment of rage, they threw his papers into the fire, the flames consuming his precious work, each page blackening, curling into ash. Avicenna's heart shattered. He watched helplessly as months, even years of his work disappeared into smoke. The words he had labored over vanishing before his eyes. In that moment, he felt a despair deeper than anything he had ever known. Is this the end? He thought, his mind numb with grief. Has everything I've done been for nothing? But just as despair threatened to swallow him whole, a small voice within whispered, "Stand up, Avicenna." His purpose, his calling, was not bound to ink and parchment. His knowledge lived within him, carved into his memory, woven into his soul. They could burn his books, but they could not destroy the healer within. With renewed strength, he rose from the ashes of his work and continued on, his steps slower, but his heart fierce. His journey took him through villages and cities, across mountains and rivers, each place offering a new lesson, each face teaching him a new truth. He learned humility, resilience, and the value of each moment, each breath. Every hardship became a part of his story. Every trial a new chapter in the life he was writing. In one town, he met an old herbalist, a woman whose hands were rough with age, but whose mind was sharp as steel. She taught him the secrets of rare plants, herbs that grew in hidden places, each one carrying a healing power he had never known. In another village, he found a young boy with a brilliant memory, eager to learn. Avicenna shared his knowledge with him, teaching the boy the basics of medicine, knowing that his words might spark a new journey, a new life of healing. Though he had lost so much, he gained more with each step, each encounter. His book of healing began to rewrite itself in his mind, clearer, sharper, a testament not only to science, but to the strength and resilience of the human spirit. And through it all, he never lost sight of his purpose: to heal, to share, to leave behind a world better than the one he had found. After months of wandering, his reputation began to reach the ears of scholars, rulers, and nobles far and wide. And one day a messenger arrived, his voice filled with urgency. "Avicenna," he said, bowing respectfully, "our king is gravely ill. No one can heal him, but we have heard of your gifts. Please, come with me. Save our king, and you shall be given whatever you desire." Avicenna, weary from his travels but filled with newfound purpose, nodded. He would go, not for riches or power, but for the chance to serve, to heal once more. The path before him was still uncertain, the trials still waiting, but he knew that he was ready. More ready than ever. As he mounted his horse, he looked back at the winding road he had travelled, the places he had seen, the lives he had touched. His journey had taken him from exile to understanding, from despair to hope. And now he was returning. Not as the boy who had left, but as a man, a healer whose knowledge had been forged in the fires of struggle. The road of trials had tested him, shaped him, and made him stronger. And as he rode toward his next challenge, his heart was steady, his mind clear. He was Avicenna, the healer, the wanderer, and his journey was far from over. Chapter 9. The Canon of Medicine. Avicenna was ready. His journey, his trials, his sleepless nights, and endless lessons, all had led him to this moment. He had healed kings and villagers, saved lives, and travelled paths filled with both danger and wisdom. But now it was time to write again. Not just any book, but his life's work. The Canon of Medicine. This was not merely a book. It was a universe. An entire world of knowledge captured in ink. Avicenna knew that what he was about to create would stand as a guide, a source of truth, for healers, scholars, and seekers for generations to come. He could feel it in his bones, a sense of purpose so strong, so clear, it was as if the universe itself were urging him on. He sat at his desk, the first page before him, blank but full of possibility. His hand hovered over the parchment, quill ready, as he searched for the perfect words to begin. What he wanted was not just a collection of treatments and theories. No. He wanted this book to capture the very essence of healing, of the art and science that held human life in balance. Finally, he dipped his quill and wrote, his handwriting steady, deliberate. Medicine is the science by which we learn to preserve health, cure disease, and understand the workings of the human body. The words poured from him, as if he had carried them for a lifetime, waiting to be unleashed. He wrote of fevers, of headaches, of poisons, and their antidotes. Each page filled with his careful, precise script, his knowledge unfolding one line at a time. He described the organs, each with its own purpose, its own mystery. The heart, he wrote, was not just a muscle, but the source of courage, the brain, the seat of reason, and the liver, the force of life itself. But Avicenna knew that medicine was more than physical. It was also about the mind, the spirit. And so he wrote, with a fierce dedication, on the importance of understanding the patient's soul, their fears, their dreams. A true healer, he penned, knows that every illness is a story, each patient a book yet to be read. As the days passed, he continued to write, diving deeper into his theories, his discoveries. He outlined his methods, each one a blend of ancient wisdom and his own observations. He shared how he had used the power of herbs, the knowledge of anatomy, the science of diagnosis, and even the secrets he had learned from alchemists and scholars along his journey. But it was not without struggle. The more he wrote, the more questions filled his mind. At times he would stop, his hand frozen, his thoughts swirling. Is it enough? He wondered. Can I capture the whole of medicine in these pages? One night, exhausted, he laid down his quill and stared at the manuscript he had filled so far. He rubbed his temples, his mind clouded with doubt. What if there was something he had missed? What if his book, his canon, wasn't as complete as he hoped? He felt the weight of his responsibility, the lives that would depend on this work, the healers who would look to these pages for guidance. But then, in the quiet, he remembered his journey, the faces of those he had healed, the wisdom he had gathered from every corner of the land. He remembered the patients who had looked up at him with hope, the lives he had saved against all odds. He took a deep breath, his doubt fading. He knew he was giving everything he had, and that would have to be enough. And so, he continued, hour after hour, day after day. He wrote until his hands ached, his eyes heavy, but his heart filled with a deep, unbreakable resolve. He wanted this canon to be a lighthouse, a guide for all who sought to heal, to understand, to save. This was not just a book, it was a bridge from one mind to another, a gift of knowledge to those who would come after him. He poured himself into the details, describing illnesses and treatments, remedies for fevers, cures for poisons, and even advice on diet and health. He wanted his work to be complete, not only a guide for treating illness, but also a way to prevent it. He wrote about the importance of cleanliness, of fresh air, of exercise, things most people overlooked, but which he knew could save lives. And then, as he approached the final pages, he felt something stirring within him, a sense of finality, of purpose. These last words would complete his journey, his story. With a steady hand, he wrote his closing thoughts. Let every healer, every student, and every person who reads these words remember, medicine is not just a science. It is an art, a gift, a responsibility. To heal is to serve, to understand, to see the whole and not just the part. With those final words, he set down his quill, his hand trembling with both exhaustion and pride. The canon of medicine was complete. The work of his life, his journey, his sacrifice, all bound in the pages that now lay before him. He looked at the manuscript, the countless hours, the countless nights, and felt peace. For a long moment, he sat there, gazing at his work, his heart filled with both pride and humility. He knew that this book would travel beyond his own life, beyond his own time. It would reach healers, scholars, and even kings in faraway lands. And maybe, just maybe, it would help make the world a little brighter, a little more hopeful. As the sun rose, casting a warm light over his finished manuscript, Avicenna closed his eyes, a soft smile crossing his lips. He had done it. The boy from Bukhara, the wanderer, the exile, the healer. He had created something that would outlast him, something that would keep healing, keep teaching, keep living. And so, with the dawn's light bathing his work, Avicenna rose, feeling a calm strength within him. He knew his journey was not over, but his legacy was born. Chapter 10. Enemies at the Gate. Avicenna was finally at peace, or so he thought. His canon of medicine was complete, his work admired, and his reputation as a healer had spread across kingdoms. But with fame, as he was soon to learn, came danger. Behind the praise, the smiles, and the accolades lurked envy. And envy, once awakened, can be a powerful, dangerous force. The first signs of trouble were whispers, faint rumors that drifted through the city. Avicenna's methods are strange, they'd say, a touch of fear in their voices. He knows things that no ordinary man should know. At first he ignored it, brushing off the gossip as mere superstition. But the voices grew louder, the rumors darker. One evening, as he walked through the palace gardens, a messenger approached him, pale and trembling. "Avicenna," the young man stammered. "There are those who wish you harm. I heard them speaking in the halls." The messenger's eyes darted around as if the walls themselves could hear. Avicenna's heart pounded, but his face remained calm. He had suspected this day might come. His knowledge, his influence, his closeness to the powerful, it was more than some could bear. He nodded to the messenger, thanking him with a steady voice. But inside, a storm of questions raged. Who would want to harm him? Who feared him enough to plot against him? That night, he lay awake, his mind racing. The faces of colleagues, nobles, rivals flashed through his mind. He had never sought power for himself. His only aim had been to heal, to learn, to share his discoveries with the world. But perhaps His success had threatened those who valued control above all else. The next day he went about his duties as usual, treating patients, advising scholars, and teaching students. Yet he could feel eyes watching him, whispers trailing behind him wherever he went. He felt like a stranger in his own world, a man surrounded by shadows. Then the first blow struck. A letter arrived, unsigned, the words sharp and filled with venom. You think you're untouchable, but your pride will be your downfall. Beware, Avicenna. The world does not need your dangerous ideas. The threat was clear, the warning undeniable. He held the letter, feeling a cold anger building within him. He had devoted his life to helping others, and now they turned against him. But he would not be intimidated. No. His mind was stronger than their fear, his heart braver than their hate. He knew his purpose, his path, and he would not allow envy or ignorance to stand in his way. So he continued his work, moving with a quiet determination, a silent defiance. Yet his enemies were relentless. One evening, as he returned to his chambers, he found the door forced open, his bookshelves overturned, his manuscripts scattered across the floor. His personal journals, his private thoughts, his dreams, lay in shreds, ripped apart by unknown hands. He knelt down, his chest heavy with the sight of his ruined work. But more than the loss of his writings, it was the invasion, the hatred that struck him. This was not just envy. This was a message. His enemies wanted him to feel vulnerable, to know he was being watched, targeted. They wanted him to be afraid. Yet fear was not in Avicenna's nature. With a steady hand, he gathered the torn pages, carefully stacking them, piece by piece. If they think they can silence me, he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. They do not know me at all. The next day, he requested an audience with the king. He would not cower. He would not run. He was a scholar, a healer, a man who had dedicated his life to knowledge and truth. And so, standing before the ruler, he voiced his concerns, his suspicions. He explained carefully that there were those who sought to undermine him, to destroy his work. The king listened, his expression thoughtful, his gaze sharp. Avicenna, he said, his voice firm, you have served this kingdom well. Your wisdom, your skill. They have saved lives, including my own. But power attracts enemies, and those who wish to harm you may be closer than you think. The king's words echoed in Avicenna's mind, each one sharpening his resolve. He knew now that he could not simply rely on the goodwill of others, nor expect that his work would be safe. He would have to guard his knowledge, protect his discoveries, and tread carefully in a world that saw him as both a healer and a threat. And so, Avicenna moved with caution, watching, listening. He trusted few, his circle growing smaller, his once open heart now guarded. He hid copies of his manuscripts in secret places, ensuring that his knowledge would survive even if he did not. Each step, each day, he became more aware of the forces working against him, the enemies lurking in the shadows. Then, one night, as he walked through the quiet corridors of the palace, he sensed a presence behind him. Turning quickly, he found himself face to face with a figure cloaked in darkness, a dagger glinting in their hand. Avicenna! the figure hissed, voice filled with menace. You have gone too far. Your knowledge, your ideas, they are poison. For a moment, Avicenna's heart raced, his body tensed, but he did not flinch. If knowledge is poison to you, he replied, his voice steady, then ignorance is a curse I would never bear. The figure moved closer, the dagger raised. But Avicenna's courage, his calm, was unwavering. He stared into the shadowed face, his gaze unbreakable, his mind filled with a fierce resolve. And in that moment, something shifted. The figure hesitated, their grip loosening as if caught off guard by the strength of the man before them. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the figure turned and vanished into the darkness, leaving Avicenna alone in the empty hall. He stood there, his breath steady, his heart calm. He had faced his enemy, had seen the hatred in their eyes, and he had not wavered. In the days that followed, Avicenna continued his work, his focus sharper, his will stronger. He knew now that the path of knowledge was not easy, that those who seek truth must often walk alone. But he would not let fear rule him. He would not let hatred consume him. His enemies had tried to silence him, to crush his spirit, but they had only made him stronger. He was Avicenna, a healer, a scholar, a man of unwavering purpose. And as he returned to his studies, his heart filled with a fierce, unbreakable resolve. He knew that no force, no threat, no enemy could ever stop him from sharing his gift with the world. Chapter 11. Love and Wisdom. Avicenna had always been known as a man of intellect, a mind devoted to knowledge, to the study of life's mysteries, to healing those in need. But behind the scholar's calm exterior lay a heart that felt deeply, that yearned for connection, for companionship. And on one quiet evening, under the warm glow of the palace lamps, he found himself face to face with someone who stirred that hidden part of him. Someone who saw beyond his books, beyond his fame. Her name was Layla. She was a woman of quiet strength, with eyes that held a mystery Avicenna couldn't quite read. She worked in the palace, a skilled herbalist known for her gentle touch and her calm wisdom. Their paths crossed often, as they both shared a love for healing, for the beauty of nature's remedies. But tonight, as they lingered by the garden's edge, speaking in soft voices under the moonlight, Avicenna felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel, a spark, a warmth that filled his chest. "Avicenna," she said, her voice gentle, carrying a weight of unspoken words. "I've heard many stories about you, of your travels, your work, your wisdom, but is there ever a time when you simply rest?" He smiled, a rare, genuine smile, as he looked into her kind eyes. "Rest?" he replied, a hint of humor in his tone. "There is so much to learn, so much to understand. The world is filled with questions, and I am driven to find answers." Layla's eyes softened. "But sometimes it's good to simply be. To let go of the questions, if only for a moment, and to live in the answer that is right in front of you." Her words stayed with him, lingering in his mind like a melody. To live in the answer right in front of you. It was something he had never thought about, never allowed himself to truly feel. But as the days passed, he found himself drawn to Layla's quiet wisdom, her gentle way of seeing the world. They spent hours talking about herbs, remedies, the power of nature. But there were moments of silence too, moments where their gazes would meet, and something unspoken would pass between them. For the first time in his life, Avicenna felt seen, not for his reputation, his intellect or his achievements, but simply for who he was. And in those moments he realized that love, true, quiet love, was a kind of wisdom all its own. It was not found in books or knowledge, but in the heart, in the simple, powerful act of sharing a life with another. But as their connection deepened, so did the challenges he faced. His enemies were growing bolder, more determined. One evening, as he sat with Layla, sharing stories and laughter, a guard rushed in, his face pale with urgency. "Avicenna!" he gasped. "There are men at the gates. They are demanding an audience with you. They claim you've meddled in things best left alone." Avicenna's joy faded, replaced by a familiar tension. The shadows of envy, of rivalry, were closing in again. Layla touched his hand, her warmth steady, grounding him. "Remember who you are," she whispered, her voice a soft strength. "They cannot touch what is true within you." With her words echoing in his heart, he rose to meet the men waiting for him. They were nobles, scholars of lesser skill, and those who envied his success. Their eyes burned with accusation as they spoke, their voices laced with scorn. "You meddle in matters beyond your understanding, Avicenna," one of them spat. "Medicine, philosophy, science, you push too far." He looked at them, calm, unwavering, his mind clear, his purpose steady. "Knowledge is a gift that should be used to heal, to help, to serve," he replied, his voice low but firm. "And if that threatens you, perhaps it is not I who oversteps, but you who are blinded by fear." The men muttered, casting suspicious glances, but his words struck a chord. They could not deny the truth behind them, and one by one, they backed down, their resolve faltering. Avicenna returned to the garden, his heart racing, but he found Layla waiting, her presence soothing, her eyes full of understanding. "Is this the price of wisdom?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "This constant battle?" She took his hand, holding it gently. "True wisdom," she said softly, "is knowing when to fight and when to let go. Not every battle needs to be fought. Some things, some truths, are best left to the heart." And in that moment, Avicenna felt a peace he had never known. He understood now that wisdom was not only in the mind, in the search for answers, but in the soul's quiet acceptance of what could not be changed. And with Layla by his side, he felt that he had finally found a balance, a harmony between his mind and his heart. Their days together were few, stolen moments between his duties, his research, his relentless pursuit of knowledge. But each moment was precious, filled with laughter, warmth, and a love that neither of them needed to name. They understood each other in a way that went beyond words, beyond reason. Yet life for Avicenna was never without challenge. There came a time when he was called away, summoned by another king, another ruler in need of his skills. And as he prepared to leave, his heart ached with the thought of parting from Layla, from the peace he had found with her. She stood with him by the gate, her hand in his, her gaze unwavering. "Remember," she said, her voice steady despite the sadness in her eyes, that wherever you go, I am with you, as the strength within you, as the love that holds you steady. He nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude, with love. And I too will carry you with me, he whispered. In every word I write, in every life I heal. With a final embrace, they parted, both knowing that love, true love, could never truly be separated by distance. As he rode away, his heart felt both heavy and light. Heavy with the longing for her presence, and light with the knowledge that he was not alone. As the miles stretched behind him, Avicenna thought of her words, her gentle wisdom, her quiet strength. She had shown him that love was not a distraction, not a weakness, but a guide, a source of strength that would keep him grounded even as he ventured into the unknown. And so, as he arrived at his destination, he carried her memory with him, her voice echoing softly in his heart. It reminded him that even the greatest wisdom, even the most profound knowledge, could not compare to the simple truth of love, a truth that filled him with a peace that no enemy, no challenge could ever take away. Chapter 12. A Legacy for the Ages. Avicenna knew his time was drawing near. The journey, the countless hours spent healing, writing, teaching, they had taken their toll. His body, once full of energy, now felt the weight of his years, each ache a reminder of the paths he had walked, the battles he had fought. But his spirit, his spirit remained fierce, unbroken, a flame that refused to dim. He spent his final days in quiet reflection, surrounded by his most trusted students. They came from far and wide, eager to hear his teachings, to absorb every last bit of wisdom he could offer. They watched him with reverence, knowing that they were in the presence of a man whose name would be spoken for generations. "Master," one student whispered, "what shall we do when you are gone?" Avicenna's eyes, though tired, sparkled with a gentle warmth. "Remember, my friends," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of his life's journey. "Knowledge is a light that must be shared, not hoarded. I am but one star in a vast sky. When I am gone, you, all of you, must carry that light forward." His words fell over them like a blessing, each one feeling the immense responsibility he was passing on. Avicenna had given them more than knowledge. He had given them purpose. They could see that his greatest achievement was not in his books or his fame, but in the lives he had touched, the minds he had opened. One quiet evening, as the sun cast its last rays over the horizon, Avicenna took a walk through the palace gardens. Each step felt heavy, each breath a little slower, yet his mind wandered back through the years, to his childhood, his first taste of knowledge, the nights spent studying under the stars, the people he had saved, the love he had felt. Each memory was like a page, a chapter of a life well lived, a journey that had taken him from a small village to the hearts and minds of people across the world. He sat beneath a tree, feeling the cool earth beneath him, and closed his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered to the wind, to the earth, to the universe that had given him this life, this gift of understanding. He knew he had done his part, that his life's work would endure, that his canon of medicine would stand as a guide for healers, scholars, and seekers for centuries. And in that peaceful moment, he felt a presence, a familiar warmth. Layla. Though she was far, her memory, her love, was a part of him. He could almost hear her voice, her gentle wisdom reminding him that even the greatest minds must find peace. That love, true love, is a legacy as powerful as knowledge. The days passed, and he grew weaker, his strength slipping away. But his mind, sharp as ever, continued to teach, to guide. He spoke to his students until the very end, his voice growing softer, yet never losing its strength, its purpose. In his final moments, he gathered them close, looking into each face, seeing not only students, but the future. "My friends," he whispered, his voice barely more than a breath, "remember, medicine is more than a science. It is a gift, a responsibility. Use it with compassion, with understanding. For knowledge without kindness is hollow." With those words he closed his eyes, a gentle peace settling over him. His breathing slowed, his body relaxed, and with one final breath, Avicenna was gone. But his legacy, that spark he had kindled, would live on. His students mourned, each one carrying a part of him, a piece of his wisdom, his love for life, his quest for truth. They buried him with honor, and his name spread like wildfire, carried by those who had felt his influence, his strength. Across kingdoms and deserts, over mountains and seas, the name Avicenna became legend, whispered with reverence, spoken with pride. The canon of medicine became a guide, a treasure, a source of knowledge that transcended time and place. Scholars from distant lands traveled to study his work, to walk in his footsteps, to learn from the mind that had dared to question, to seek, to understand. And as the years passed, the memory of Avicenna grew brighter, his legacy a light that continued to shine, guiding healers, inspiring minds, touching lives. His journey, though long finished, was never truly over. Each page of his writings, each story told, each life saved, was a part of him, a testament to the boy who had gazed at the stars and dreamed of unlocking the secrets of the universe. He was more than a healer, more than a scholar. He was a soul who had seen the world in its beauty and mystery and had given his life to understanding it. Avicenna, a name that would live forever, a legacy that would never fade. And as his memory lingered, as his work continued to change lives, one truth remained, as clear and bright as the stars he had once studied. Knowledge is eternal, and love. Love is the greatest wisdom of all.